All right. Sorry for the technical error. Yes, once again, good morning to the parents and educators who have joined us here today. Thank you for spending a part of your Sunday with us. Welcome to Day 2 of PCF Parental Conference 2022, Embracing Individuality, Empowering Parents, Celebrating Children. I am Diana Elizabeth, Senior Curriculum Specialist from PCF's Professional and Education Development Division. I will be your moderator for this morning's presentation. This morning, we are pleased to have 3 professional speakers to share tips and strategies on how we can strengthen our communication skills with children. Our first speaker for topic 1, let's talk about how you feel, the role of language and interaction in enhancing children's emotional development, is Associate Professor Ng Bee Chin from Nanyang Technological University. Associate Professor Ng Bee Chin works in bilingualism and multilingualism, focusing on the impact of language contact on individuals and their communities. She researches both cognitive and social aspects of language use, aiming to explore how our cognition and our worldview are shaped by society and culture. A common thread running through her research is the connection between the self and the social. She firmly believes that our social interactions impact our mind. Ms. Bee Chin will present information about the role of language and interaction and how these can shape, augment, and enrich a child's emotional world. She will discuss how different ways of talking concretely about emotions and feelings to young children can proactively lead to enhanced emotional understanding. Our second speaker for topic 2, positive communication when managing challenging behaviors, is Professor Kenneth Poon, Associate Dean, Education Research and Center Co-Director, Center for Research in Child Development, Nanyang Technological University. Professor Kenneth is trained as a clinical psychologist and in early intervention. His research focuses on the development pathways of children, how they can be assessed, and how their development can be optimized. Professor Kenneth serves as President of Rainbow Centre, Singapore, Board Member of the National Council of Social Service, and Treasurer on the Board of the International Association for the Scientific Study of Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. He also represents Singapore at the ASEAN Commission on the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Women and Children, ACWC. Professor Kenneth will discuss ideas for positive guidance of behaviors and suggestions for managing challenging behaviors. Our third speaker for topic 3, what can we do when our child does not speak, is PCF's very own Senior Speech and Language Therapies from the Inclusive Education team, Ms. Alison Choo. Ms. Alison has worked with adults and children with diverse needs and profiles. She has a special interest in partnering with educators and partners. Alison hopes to give every child a voice and listen to them as much as they are willing to communicate. Alison will share what it means to have total communication with our children and how we can use multiple modes of communications with them. Before I hand the stage over to our first speaker, parents and educators, may I invite you to leave your questions in the comment box. We will answer them later during the Q&A segment. We are now moving to our first speaker, Associate Professor Ng Bee Chin. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I would also like to thank PCF for inviting me to this very special occasion today. And let me try to do all my sharing without any glitches. Okay, share. Okay, all right. Now, I will get straight. Can everyone hear me? Is everything okay? Good. Okay. Now I'll just get straight into the talk. All right. As you can see from the introduction, I'm a linguist, and today I'm going to talk about language and the role of language and interaction in enhancing children's emotional development. Okay. Okay, now all that were really, they are really challenging, especially the last one. They're very challenging for caregivers, and they are present in our daily life when we are dealing with children, anything from infancy to school years. All right, and I think when we are faced with those situations, there are many decisions that we have to make. And yesterday, we've heard several experts in the keynotes and in the panel talk about how to manage all this kind of what we call emotional meltdowns. Okay, and today I'm going to focus very squarely on language. All right, so in the next 20 minutes, I'm going to look at the interaction between language development and emotion development in the first 5 years. And I'm going to look at very, very quickly emotion regulation. But the main thing I want to talk about is the importance of emotion differentiation in the early years. Okay, now, as we all know, emotion is multimodal. All right, when we are thinking about, when we talk about emotion, it's not just language. All right, even though I'm going to talk about language today, but as you heard from yesterday, there is sight. All right, for example, your facial expression, and there's touch. We know how comforting a touch can be for little ones. But today I'm going to focus on sounds. All right. And sounds basically what children hear especially in terms of language, and how that actually shape their perception of the emotional world around them. All right. As you know, from most of you have read, perhaps in the course of your parenting or caregiving journey from experts. And as you know, experts often disagree. But when it comes to language development, there are golden rules or there's certain things that all linguists or all everyone who works on a developmental aspect agree on. So, for example, 0 to 5 are the golden years of language development. We all know that, right? And by the time a child is 5 years of age, they kind of roughly have acquired most of the basic rules of the languages that is spoken around them. Now, and when it comes to language, exposure is very important. When we talk about exposure, we talk about quantity and quality. Quantity is, even though it's controversial, we can measure that. There's several instruments that are around that we can use to measure quantity. But in terms of quality, what do we mean? I want to emphasize that by quality, we do not really mean whether you speak perfect English or whether it's grammatically correct, or that is part of it, but it's a very, very small part. Now, the central crux of quality comes from the interaction. And I think we hear a lot yesterday about that, about the kind of relationship that we build with our children. All right, and one very important thing that perhaps many people don't know is that language development happens from birth. All right, we often think of language development as from the time when you hear a child forms the first sentence or the first utterance, or when they say their first word. But now we have a lot of evidence to show that language learning happens from birth. Some even argues even before that. All right, infants have finely tuned ears. They hear sounds that we are unable to hear. All right, so if I say something like bindi and bindi, all right, I think perhaps the Tamil speakers in the audience will be able to hear the difference, but most of us who do not speak Tamil don't hear the difference. But children at birth, all children in the world, in the first 8 months of their life, they can hear all kinds of fine sound distinctions, all right? And part of language learning means losing this ability to hear this distinction. Now, what this means is that what I'm trying to show through all this example here is that children are born with very, very acute hearing, unless, of course, they have congenital hearing losses, all right? And the fourth thing is that most all linguists agree on is that emotion is conveyed most clearly through language. All right. Now I want to show why language is important and in the early years, and how children as young as 5 or 6 days in the first week of their life hears emotion, all right, through 3 sets of evidence from low pass filter studies, I will explain that, and evidence from annoyed stranger studies. This is very small snippets to show the caregivers out there that from the time we are born, our ears are finally attuned to the kind of emotion that we have in language. All right, I want you to listen to these 2 clips I'm going to show you, and I want you to tell me which one will infants prefer to hear. All right. Okay. Now that's clip number 1, and low pass filter speech are just muffled sounds, and the content of the speech is taken out. Right? Now let's listen very quickly to clip number 2. Okay, now clip number 2, as you can see, has more prosodic contours, as we call it, and it's more dynamic. And I think there's no prize for guessing which one do young infants prefer to listen to. And these clips are played to infants as young as 5 days of age. And the second clip is the one they prefer to listen to because it contains really positive affect. All right. So infants who listen to those kind of very dynamic, positive prosodic contours are soothed, they calm down, they respond more positively. So we have, again, this is just evidence that children, young infants, are very sensitive to receiving positive emotional feedback. All right. And the next, I'm going to play you a small little clip. All right.
There's something inside. Can you see what's inside the box? You can take the lid off. Is there something in there? There's a green cone. I'm going to put it back inside of the box and put the lid back on the box and close it up. Can I see that? Thank you. Let's see what else we have. Look at this. See? Look at this. There.
Hi, Teresa. I'm going to sit here and read a magazine.
Okay. That's Kelly. Kelly's going to sit and read a magazine. Kelly, look at this.
That's aggravating. That's so annoying.
Oh, I thought it was really interesting.
Well, that's just your opinion. It's aggravating.
Here. Can I see that? Thank you.
I'm going to go now, Teresa.
Kelly's going bye-bye.
Okay, I think that very short example shows you that that child in the video is 14 months old, all right? And it's unlikely to understand words like aggravating, but what a child is responding to is the emotional tone of that whole incident. And I won't spend any time talking about emotion regulation because you've heard so much about it yesterday, but we know that it is important, all right? And we know that emotion regulation, as you heard yesterday, which is related to executive function, is a very, very important part of how we want to raise our children to be successful. And when we think about success, we often think about academic achievement, but we know that success interpreted more broadly means more than that. It means raising children who are emotionally well adjusted to manage all the stresses that they're going to get in life, all right? And while we cannot protect our children from negative emotional experience, what we can do is to equip them with the skills to actually manage that, which we know is far more important. Emotion regulation, as we know, is central for a general sense of well-being, and is not only ultimately important for mental health, it is crucial for building positive social relationships. And we all know that this is a very important part of a very important skill for children to function in a function or even thrive in a very complex world that we live in. And yesterday, if you've attended the sessions, you have heard a lot about emotion regulation and the caregiver's role and the child's, and also emotion regulation from the child's perspective. All right. And one of the things that you probably would have heard yesterday, I want to draw your attention to two things. All right. Labeling and expressing. All right. The importance of helping our children have emotional knowledge by providing them with labels of what they are experiencing, all right? And all of that actually happens through language, all right? By labeling, by co-expressing, co-building, we are giving children the language of thought, all right? And we're giving them the ability to build a word bank to actually later do internal reflection. And this is from a child's perspective, they have to do cognitive appraisal of the situations, of the emotion that they are feeling. All right. And parents or caregivers' discussion of all these emotional events actually provide the child the language and the tools to actually appraise the situation as they grow. Okay. When we look at emotion differentiation, this is the key issue that I want to talk about today. We are talking about the different emotions that we actually experience around our, in the research up to now, psychologists talk about 7 basic emotions, but but we know that these 7 basic emotions are subcategorized into many, many different emotions. All right, but I think the 4 main emotions that we talk about when with children, mainly the main 4, the big 4, and here I've just sort of briefly call it glad, sad, scared, and mad. All right, so happiness, sadness, fear, and anger. All right, and I think most research shows that children start from knowing what are good emotions and bad emotions. As you can see from here, we have 1 good emotion, that is happiness, and the rest are negative emotions. And that's fairly typically across the world, across all languages, we tend to have more words to talk about negative emotions than words to talk about happy emotions. But despite that, the one that appears first in most children's repertoire is the happy emotion. All right. So children generally know what are good emotions and what are bad emotions. What they're not so good at is learning about the different intensities in emotions. And this is when the labeling helps. And as the famous adage goes, if you can name it, you can tame it. All right. So parents or caregivers, by providing children with these labels, they are actually helping them to learn the different shades of many emotions. So emotions are just not good and bad. All right. So affect labeling, putting our feelings into words, help children learn or acquire emotion knowledge. So emotion differentiation is a term used by people who work on emotion or researchers who work on emotions to describe our ability to make fine-grained distinction between different emotions, and also, more importantly, the different intensity that you feel within each emotion. And this ED or emotion differentiation is highly correlated with emotion knowledge, which is required for emotion regulation. There are two types of emotion differentiation: positive emotion differentiation and negative emotion differentiation. All right, positive ED is the ability to distinguish and identify positive emotions, for example, joy and excitement. And the converse, negative ED, is the ability to distinguish and identify negative emotions. And very interestingly, it is negative ED that most researchers have found that that is more important. All right, and maybe it's possibly because there are so many of them, but interestingly, in different areas of research, what they found was that negative ED is the one that is correlated with higher emotion regulation. Now, this doesn't mean that we should just ignore talking to children about positive emotion, but what it means is that obviously is a negative emotion differentiation that is critical for emotion knowledge that leads to better emotion regulation or control. Okay, now how can parents do that? How can caregivers do that? What we need to do is to think about the different shades of bad. So when you're feeling angry, there are, I mean, yesterday you heard the different speakers talk about different tools, like, using a thermometer, using a scale, is this something really, really important? But another way is to do it through language. Are you just annoyed, or are you upset? Are you angry, or are you furious? And when you're feeling fear, are you just afraid, a little bit frightened, or are you fearful, or are you terrified? All right, when you're feeling sad, are you unhappy? Are you sad? Are you very sad? Or are you just shattered? All right. So these are the kind of, I mean, we have words to describe this emotion in all the different languages. I've been collecting emotion labels in Malay, in Mandarin Chinese, in English. I haven't got a lexicon in Tamil yet, but across all languages, we have ways of talking about these different sets of intensity. All right. And also what is really interesting is that research have found that the ability to make this fine distinction in negative emotion lead to better emotion regulations. They are linked to more adaptive outcomes. By this, we mean the ability to adapt to different situations. And they predict lower aggressive tendencies. And they also have general lower emotional intensity. I mean, children who have, or adults, even, and this applies to adults as well. Individuals who have higher negative ED also experience lower emotional intensity of negative emotion. All right. And then in all the studies, they also have higher levels of pleasant mood and daily life satisfaction. All right. Now, what I've shown up to now is that, as you can see, language is a key role, right? I haven't really spent a lot of time talking about the interaction role. So when caregivers ask open-ended questions, all right, when they are involved in interaction with children about what they're feeling, how they're feeling, and they supply them with labels, they are using language really for a lot of this transaction. And this transaction, all right, or this interaction gives rise to emotion differentiation, again, through the labeling, through the talking, and this emotion differentiation in turn is also related to emotion regulation. Can you see that it's all kind of an interlocking cycle, all right, leading to better emotion knowledge. So coming back to our earlier clips on all these different phases of use, incidentally, I want to thank parents of these children for allowing me to use their clips. So when we see these clips, we should see them as an opportunity for us to actually discuss with the child experiencing this emotion, and also getting them to learn or to build their emotion knowledge. I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to conclude that children need to be partnered in their emotional development, and the emotions are not just emotions are not tangible, but the consequences of not tending to them are palpable. All right. We see all those damaged cases around us. And I think in the very, very early years, we know how critical they are. And we've heard so much yesterday about developmentally how important it is to tend to these communication issues at a very young age. And language is a great tool to access this problem. And investing in nurturing children's emotional well-being is helpful and is investing in a brighter future. And my next two colleagues will talk to you more about communication. Okay, I will stop here.
Thank you, Professor Ng, for the information, videos, and examples, which I think all will agree they were all engaging and informative about the importance of language, especially when we are talking to young children. I can definitely relate to the points raised because as an adult, I think, and as an educator, I feel that it's definitely essential for us to have a playful, calm, and soothing voice when we're talking to young children. I want to remind participants at this point to drop any questions that you may have for AP Bichin after hearing her into the comment box, and we will attempt to address them later in the Q&A segment. Next, I would love to invite Professor Kenneth to share more of his thoughts on positive guidance of behaviors. Professor Kenneth.
Thanks so much, Diana, and a very good morning to all of you. I'm very, very happy to be here to talk about one topic that is actually very close to my heart, which is actually looking at challenging behaviors, particularly of young children. That was an area of research that I undertook for my master's research some years ago. So I think that it is fantastic that Bichin talked about the importance of communication, because I think when we look at challenging behaviors, I think it's very dangerous just to approach challenging behaviors as a problem by itself. Because, I mean, we know that it's problematic. We know that, and I think my colleague yesterday, Dr. Ng Yi Lin, talked about the importance of self-regulation. We know that there are longer-term impacts that we can see of difficulties with self-regulation, difficulties that we'll be seeing with challenging behaviors, socially and cognitively as well. For us as parents, I have got two teenagers now, so I've had the joy of journeying through my two daughters through their preschool years, and engaging in all sharing your anxieties, especially or stress. So challenging behaviors can be stressful as well for parents. So what I intend to do over the next say 20 minutes or so, or 15 minutes, would really be to share perspectives from psychology and education, to think about how can we go about managing this. And I think it's always nice to be not the first speaker, because many things that I want to talk about have been talked about. So I think I just want to take a few things that was mentioned earlier, that self-regulation is actually an ability to understand and manage our own behaviors, and that it's something that is developmental, meaning that it occurs and sharpens over time. So as we can see with this young child over here, when we're looking at infants and toddlers, they're very their ability to manage their own emotions is actually very much reliant on what parents or adults around them can provide for them. So the support, the physical presence, the touch, the reassuring voice, these are all very important. But infants already start to develop some self-regulation behaviors with the thumb sucking and such. What we do know is that it develops further over time. That when we start looking at toddlers, our toddlers are able to wait for short periods, but not too long. What we know about preschool children is that many of them are starting to be a lot more confident, particularly in very familiar places, particularly among people that they are familiar, that they know, such as the preschool environment. And then once we look into children who are in primary school, school-age children, especially as they start to have a better sense of what other people are thinking, what other adults are thinking, their ability to actually control themselves and regulate their own emotions is very much strengthened. So actually, I think when it comes to self-regulation, one of the most important things that serves as a foundation for it is, for its development, is actually the strong attachment that a child can have with or her caregivers, particularly parents, as well as particularly for those of us who send our children to childcare centers, or for those of us who are educators, the relationship between the child and the other adults in the childcare environment. So these actually help to form a secure base in which our children will have a better sense of knowing now how do I go about behaving. We saw from the wonderful video that Prof. Ng showed earlier that children refer a lot to adults in terms of how they the sense that they have in the environment. So that is extremely important. So I like to therefore think of challenging behavior not being just a problem, but more importantly, challenging behavior can sometimes be a consequence of the child not understanding the situation. Challenging behavior can be also related to the child's developing abilities to self-regulate, and a mismatch, consequently, between where the child is in terms of his or her own understanding and the environment. So as much as these situations can be tricky for the child, I think it also offers a further opportunity for the child to further develop self-regulation. So what I want to do today is actually to talk about 3 reflections or 3 roles that a key adult, particularly parent or teacher, can adopt to help our child, the children that we have under our charge, develop the skills of self-regulation of behavior emotions. So you will find that as I'm talking, I try to take, and this is my teacher hat, I try to put on a fairly proactive role. You'll hear what is said about how prevention is better than cure. I think that works very much so as well for children. So I think I would like to look at what can we do as adults. 3 roles. The first role is coach. So like I said, my 2 girls are now in their teenage years. But one of the things that I did when they were young was that I brought them swimming. And before I brought them swimming by myself, I was feeling, my wife and I feel that we really want our children, our 2 girls, to be water confident. So we had a coach to help them. And being a good psychologist, I always try to learn from others. And these are a few things that I thought that the coach did exceptionally right, especially that when he was trying to teach my 2 girls swimming. I think one of the things that he did very, very importantly was to show what was the right way to do things. And I noticed, because my girls were in swimming for a couple of years, that the coaches that were teaching the babies or the young children were always in the water. Apart from safety, that was also because they were trying, there was a lot of like this hands-on showing of how do you go about doing things, how do you go about kicking, how do you go about doing the strokes. This entire aspect of showing is essential. We watch and learn. I think Prof. Ng's video earlier showed that, well, even very, very young children will watch and take reference from adults. We know that this ability to learn from looking at someone else will help us to learn. So this demonstration, or what I indicate down here as modeling the right behavior, is important. So for example, if I want to, if I, and this is speaking from experience, if I have my two daughters playing with a box of toys, I have, there is always a chance that the two of them will have a disagreement. So one of the things that I can do when I'm supporting them, when I'm trying to set things right, is that I can actually try to show how we can do things. So especially to my elder daughter, I can say, you know what, I like this toy, and I'm going to let Mei play with the other toy, with another toy. So I'll reach into the box and I'll say, wow, here, this is very nice. You can show it to Mei and ask her to play with it. So apart from just giving the toy and say, don't fight, share. What I can do is that I can actually be very, I can show how appropriate playing can be. And I think the second piece over here comes in very frequently with this entire aspect of modeling, is giving clear, calm instructions ahead of time. So to say, you know, when we are playing, we take one for ourselves, but we always take care of our other children playing with us. So I want you to give this toy to Mei, this other toy to Mei, so that she has something to play as well. So this talking is helpful because it again reinforces what we want the other child to be doing. So and likewise, or if I'm putting toys away, I can again start by talking through the entire process, because I think earlier was talking about how it's so important for us to use words to help our children understand and make sense of the world. That's precisely what we are trying to do. We want to show, we want to use our words so that the children actually understand now what is the right thing to do. Of course, I can talk about this forever, because part of my research right now is really to understand what teachers do in classrooms that will really help their children, the children in the class, to really understand, to pay attention and and to engage in what is important. So for me itself, I think the third aspect for coaching will be to encourage to guide the child by giving what we call descriptive praise. So it's not only saying that, it's not only showing and telling. We want the child to know what is right or wrong. I notice even when my staff comes up to say, you know, when you came up to me the other day and asked me whether I needed help, I found that was very helpful, because I did not dare to come up to you and ask. So likewise, even for adults, even for children, it makes a very big difference when we instead of saying, wow, clever boy or clever girl, today you're so good. We want to be very descriptive and saying that, you know, I noticed that when you're putting your toys, I thought it was very helpful when you first took the big toy basket out first and then took the biggest piece of the toy and put it inside. So when I'm saying something like that, it becomes much clearer, and I'm able to highlight key aspects that I want the child to be learning. So role number one, coach. And when we coach well, we find that we're actually setting up the child for success in the coming days. Second thought about what can we do as a parent. I call that designer. Again, another proactive strategy. And what a designer essentially does is that, or rather what we do when we are trying to design an activity, is to really set up an environment that is conducive for your child. So if I'm able to set it up, if I'm able to keep the end in mind. So for example, I might be going for a wedding ceremony after this. So what does it mean? I need to find something to help my child so that my child will be able to sit still for 30 minutes. Or if I'm going to bring the child to the zoo, what do I want to do? I want the child to be I want my child to be being able to participate in the activity during that period of time. So I think that the first thing to do then is to actually plan ahead, to ask myself now, what do I need to actually do? And so it's really to think through this process. Now, why am I bringing the child there? Where am I going? How long will I be there? How long will my child be there? Who are we going with? Are there any children who might trigger my child off? Are there any adults who my child is scared of? Or are there other children that my child might enjoy, my daughters might enjoy playing with? So this entire sense of now, where am I going? What to bring? this entire aspect of preparation is helpful, because then it gives me a sense of, now, what can I do? Can I adjust the timing, particularly if I'm going to the zoo and I know that, hey, my daughters are going to, they're going to miss the afternoon nap if I'm going to go there in late morning. Can I go there early in the day then? I can't remember what time the zoo opens anymore. But can I go there later, early in the day, so that I can wrap up my activities before they get grumpy? So when I'm able to control, of course we can't control everything, but when I'm able to control things, it sometimes makes for lower levels of challenge. So that's the teacher in me, that if I can control it, I will try to control it. I can try to adjust it so that I don't have to manage difficult situations. The second point is what my mother tells me. They always say that when you learn to be a parent, you either learn from what you learn from your parents, or what you see from your parents and you swear you never want to do. In this case, it's something that I learned from my mother. My mother always says, an idle mind is a devil's workshop. And I think that works so much for anyone. So so when our child is in an environment, what can we bring along so that I can occupy the child, particularly if we are in an environment that is completely meaningless to the child. If the child has to otherwise sit in the bus, or if the child has to be in a wedding ceremony, or to go out for a meal. So what can I do what can I bring along that can be helpful to engage the child? So say if it's the zoo, are there any printouts that we can print, or are there any things that we can take from the zoo so that it gives the child a sense of where we are going? If it's to the wedding ceremony, then should I be bringing a bag of toys, or should I be bringing some books along? So it gives me the child a sense of what is happening, and to occupy the child. And so when we have these things in place, or toys, if we have younger children, there are things that we can be engaging. I think very importantly, we also want to be setting up rules, helping the child to understand expectations. Now, what can the child do? What can the child not do? Setting the ground rules sometimes will actually help the child understand. Now, is that when we are going to this place, we're going to this room, there are going to be a lot of chairs down there, and you have to sit with me, okay? So, I mean, if you are going to explain that situation, of course, it depends on how old your child is, but to explain to the level that your child is unable to understand, it sets up the environment for it. Keeping my eye on the clock, I think I've got about a little bit more than 3 minutes left. So I'm just going to spend some time now talking about what happens if we find ourselves in a position where our child is upset, or what happens when we are seeing challenging behavior. I think the picture I want to put in your head, so I've put in two pictures, right? The first picture is that of a coach. The second is that of a designer, because you want to design. The third is to think of yourself as a firefighter. And one of the things about a firefighter is that, or rather, let me reverse the whole thing and say that when my child gets upset, it is natural for me to get upset as well. And sometimes, but what we know is that fighting fire with fire is never the way to go. What does a firefighter do? A firefighter actually douses it. Rather than to allow that natural escalation that might occur where we have a grumpy child and a grumpy parent, and then that really picking up. One of the things that we need to be doing is to take a step back and ask ourselves, now what's happening down here? And from a teacher's standpoint, this becomes a teachable moment. It becomes something that we can actually, if we manage it right, we can help the child to understand how to manage his or her own emotions in situations like this in future. So what can we do? I think first is to empathize. And I think it's fantastic that Prof. Poon had talked about that. Use this as a chance to teach, label the emotion, help the child to understand, oh, I can see that you are very upset. I can see that you really want this toy when you cannot get it, and so you are very angry. So if you are able to name it, what I learned today is Prof. Ng's adage, if you can name it, you can tame it. So I'm learning something new every day. What we do know from And so when we are able to identify that, it helps to name the emotions. I would also layer on a second part of it to say that, well, I can tell that my child, what he or she can do differently is that, like for example, if I'm going shopping and to NTUC, and I might say that, well, every time you go to NTUC, you're able to choose up to $2 worth of something that you want to buy. And then if the child cannot get it, and say, maybe next time round you can try to choose that. So in that case, I'm offering an alternative, or saying that, well, I can see you're very upset. Shall we go look for something else instead, or some? And so I think from that perspective, thinking about what other alternatives there are, I'm going to talk about two other strategies in mind for managing difficult situations like this. One is called plan ignoring. One thing that we know about from psychology is that when a child receives a positive response for an inappropriate behavior, or an appropriate or inappropriate behavior, there is a much higher chance that we're going to show that behavior again. So what it means is that if my child is crying at the supermarket because I didn't buy her the sweet, and if I were to say, okay, I buy you this time around, last time I will not buy you anymore. But what's going to happen is that the child is going to learn, and the technical term is that the child is going to be reinforced by that action. So one of the things that we want to be doing is that when a child shows an inappropriate behavior, there are times in which we are able to, we do not want to reinforce that. So I will recommend this strategy as something that you can apply for mild behaviors. Why I'm saying mild behaviors is because one of the things that happens when you say no to a child who's already upset is that there can be an intensification of whatever is going on. We call that the escalation. So what you know about plan ignoring is that if you want to engage in this strategy, be prepared that there can be more tantrums, for example, or there can be more whining. And if you give into the child at that point in time, you are really building up and encouraging the behavior in future. So if you want to employ plan ignoring, you must take it to the end. Or we might see ourselves in a position that there'll be the child might learn. There is a link over here where you can be getting a little bit more tips on how to engage in plan ignoring. Another rule is, another strategy is logical consequences, which is actually receiving a natural consequence when a rule is broken. Again, rather than to talk you through the process, because time is really running low, what I want to do is actually to just end off by really saying that the wonderful thing is that these days and age, there are so many resources out there. So the Ministry of Social and Family Development actually have developed this wonderful website. It's called Families for Life. You go do a search for Families for Life SG. And what MSF has done is that they've put together experts from all over Singapore to pull together resources for parents, for children from birth to school age that you can be tapping on. And some of the links that I have today shared with you, that I'm sharing with you, is actually drawn from their site. So go take a look at that. There are also fantastic courses that you can be looking at. And I think that's all the time I have for today. Wonderful talking to you.
Thank you, Professor Kenneth. And I think it was wonderful listening to you and your candid sharing of your own experiences. I think managing children behaviors, in children can be challenging itself for parents. So I believe your ideas on, how we can self-regulate and what to do, if you're going to be a coach, designer, and the firefighting difficult moments will be useful for parents and educators alike. So dear participants, parents, educators, please keep your questions coming in for the speakers. Last but not least, I would like to invite Miss Alison, who will share what it means to have total communication with your children. Miss Alison, please.
Thank you so much, Dinah. Hi, everyone. I'm Alison, the Senior Speech and Language Therapist from PCF Inclusion Education Team. My topic today is on what can we do when our child does not speak. And sometimes that can be really frustrating for us when our child is unable to communicate with us, but perhaps we can offer them other ways to communicate with us too. Okay, so today I'm going through what communication is, what is the impact on speech that has on children's development, what is total communication, and what are the different modalities of communication that we can offer to our children, some of the ways that we can encourage communication from them, and our role on responsiveness. Now, think about a time when you have a really bad bout or sore throat and you lose your voice. How do you communicate with others? And how do you feel? Were you nonchalant, glad that you can't speak to anyone so you have more time on your own, don't have to interact much with others? Were you frustrated that there's something that you want to convey but you are unable to? Or were you really resourceful that day, grabbing your phone to type and showing to someone, drawing pictures on notepads, trying to sign and gestures more often that day? So what can it feel like with our children who have yet to develop speech? Okay, and before they develop speech, actually, they are communicating with us through many different ways. And we know that communication develops way before spoken words when we look at examples of our babies. You know, when babies, they cry, they are telling us that they are feeling discomfort, they are unhappy, or they are hungry. When they are smiling, they are telling us that, hey, I'm satisfied, I'm well fed, I'm happy, you are playing with me and I enjoy that. So before speech actually develops at about 10 to 12 months, there's a lot of other ways that our children already communicate with us. And communication has to take place between two people, but we also do know that not all behaviors are communicative. Let's say a child goes up to the fridge and says, I want an apple, as compared to the child going up to the mom and say, I want an apple. So the person that reciprocates, or the thing that reciprocates, there's communication that happenings, and that in this case is with the child and the mom, as compared to, yes, the child is still speaking using the right tone and pragmatics, but the fridge is not going to reciprocate and give the child an apple instead. So communication doesn't happen there. So beyond just speech, there's also a lot of other factors that we have to consider: who, how, and our tone of voice as well, and the modalities. Okay, what are some of the reasons for delayed speech? It's multifactorial. Some can be part of family history, or some can be due to the environment. But we know that in the last 2 years, due to COVID, this has been widely discussed and researched among researchers or even in the media. Okay, in Straits Times, just last week, the article on the left, we have helping young children catch up with years lost to pandemic. So the UK Office for Standards in Education, Children and Services and Skills, they mentioned that because of the pandemic, many of the children had delays in speech and language. In that very same article, the NUH CDU has also reported that there's an increase in referral to speech and language therapies because many children have delayed speech and language milestones, especially in the last 2 years. Then we have Julia Swatch from Cambridge in the article on the right that pointed out that face mask does have an effect on children's ability to understand speech and acquire them as well. And coincidentally, or maybe not, the American Academy of Pediatrics, they actually moved language milestones, 1/3 of the speech and language milestones to an older age band. So all this points to various factors, or could it be screen time as well, where children spend more time at home and parents offer them more screen time. All these could be many different factors that could lead to delayed speech development. Okay, and what are the impact of speech development on children? I think these two main points of theory of mind and emotional granularity has been well covered by Prof. Kenneth. He talks about how the child uses language to perceive the world, and when they are able to perceive, using language to perceive better, that leads to lesser challenging behaviors. And Prof. Chin Bin also mentioned that, emotional differentiation, when we are able to name it, we are able to tame it. So that's children putting emotions into words. Often we always hear from teachers, from parents who have children who are unable to say that, because a child can't speak, they always present with the most challenging behavior. But perhaps, may I seek to pause and ask you to consider, is it social needs, social emotional needs that are not met, or is it that regulation needs that are not met first, before we quickly jump into the conclusion that the child does not have language and does not have speech to communicate with us? Okay, now back to the thinking point about when you had your really bad day, when you do not have speech, okay, and how do you communicate with others? What are the different modes of communication that you have, that you are able to communicate with others? We as adults are a lot more resourceful. We can think about various ways that we can use. So when we use a variety of communication modalities, the more technical term, we call that alternative and augmentative communication, AAC, and that ranges to light tech and to high tech. Light tech meaning that it can be your pen and paper, it can be your fingers, your hands to sign. High tech, it could be talk buttons or even your phone, or there are special apps for text to speech apps or picture to speech apps that help children or individuals who have yet to acquire speech or who are unable to acquire speech to communicate with others. Okay, and through the use of all these AAC, our goal is really to teach them a way to communicate, even if they are unable to speak. Okay, so there are different modalities, and the one that we are most familiar with is speech, is because that's what we use day in, day out. That is also the most efficient way to get our messages across. But actually, when we think about it, we do writing to convey our messages pretty often, through letters, through handwritten notes, through emails, through WhatsApp messages, through text. We also convey certain expressions through body language. It can be through eye contact or the lack of. It could be through our facial expression, when we smile, when we frown, when we are upset and grunt, through our body position when we face someone, or do we turn away when we are slightly more uncomfortable. Okay. There are also gestures that we use. It can be informal one that we already use every day. Our hello, our bye-bye, our see you later, thank you. These are informal ones that we already use, or it can be more formal sign language system that the community of the deaf and hard of hearing use, or it can be keyword sign, just using certain signs as we speak. Okay. There's also communication apps or assistive devices such as eye gaze devices, or communication apps on your tablet or computer, Prolog to Go, Picture AAC, Verbally or Talk Tablet, just to name a few. Okay, lastly, I know it's quite popular among special education is the use of visuals of pictures, and through formal programs such as picture exchange communication, where we teach our children to communicate, which I will go through in detail in the next few slides. Okay, but what we really want the children to do is to make choices, because we know that when we give the children the power of making choices, it motivates them. They have a say in their lives, in their preferences. They become more independent because they take charge of their choices that they have already made. And of course, it promotes communication. So choices can be big or choices can be small. It can be big choices, even deciding on what activity they go about in their day. Where do they want to go over the weekend? Who do they want to visit? Or it can be small choices that, we can offer them. So when they're in a coloring activity, even giving them, do you want red or yellow crayon? Do you like to use paint or color pencil? These are little choices that children, I have a choice also I can make. It's not always mommy telling me what to do, daddy always telling me you have to do this, just because I can't express myself. Even who goes first to the toilet? Is it Tete or is it me who gets to bathe first today? So children, they like little making that decision. I mean, even as us adults, when we get to make choices, we feel a lot more empowered as well. Okay, and what happens, you may ask, but this child can't speak. How can we give them choices? So it's easy. You can have your two hands. Do you want this or do you want that? Okay, do you want an apple for breakfast today or do you want a banana? If you have that object that they can actually take and choose, that's even better. But if you are in the shopping center, would you like to go to grandma's house or go to the park first? Okay, then the child can reach out to you and they touch, oh, I want to go to the park first, or no, let's go to grandma's house directly. Okay, they can point, they can touch your hands, and that's them indicating that, that's my choice, that's what I want. Or sometimes when the child doesn't want to, a bit more shy, they don't want to reach out their hands and touch your hand, they might stare, and then you can ask, oh, you want to go to the playground? And they might not. And that's okay too, because they are indicating that, yes, I want, that's their preference. Or if they are able to even approximate the word, so you have given them grandma or playground, they might say pa, 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 but because you have modeled, the child has listened. Okay, and if they are able to speak or try and attempt to speak, they are able to, because you have modeled for them. So having choices, using your hands, and then giving them that words to say when they are able to, they will always try. We believe that children try their best, always try their best. It's not that they don't want, it's probably because they can't when they are unable to. Okay, so there's no preparation required. All you need is your hands and give them choices. Okay, so what are the different ways that they can use to communicate when they do not have speech yet? Okay, there are talk buttons available. So it's available either as a single talk button where you can pre-record messages or words or phrases in it, or some of it comes in a series of different buttons. So on your right, it's a Big Mac. That one has a clap, so we can change different messages, or we can have the same message every day. So in the morning, if the first thing that the child would like to express to you is good morning, then you have the talk button with that pre-recorded message of good morning. So the child might wake up in their room and they come to you, and the first thing that they would like to tell you is good morning, and they can tap on that button. Okay, or if the child goes beyond just one button and would like to express how they feel, then you can pre-record different, I'm upset, I'm happy, I'm angry. And when the child is feeling those emotions, they can quickly come to you, Mama, I'm upset. They tap on the button and the button speaks on their behalf. So oh, you are upset, what shall we do? Okay, and then the children could either draw or could gestures or sign to convey what they would like to, make them happy, or to express their sadness. But at least emotional granularity, we give them the words or ways to communicate how they are feeling, and that prevents them from spiraling further. Okay, another way is to have a communication board, and it can be activity based, or it can be as simple as having just a yes and no. Okay, yes and no is very helpful at the start, once your child has learned the concept of yes and no, so that whenever you ask questions, it can be asked in a way that your child can answer yes or no, and they just tap on it and show you their preferences. Or it can be ones such as the one on the left that they can use throughout the day, where they tell you, I'm done with something, or I'm done with eating and I do not want anymore. Then they can use this, take out this communication board and point to you, finish. Okay, or if they need a breather, and they point to the breathe and relax and tell you, now I need some quiet time. Okay, or it can be specific activity based, like the one on the right, and that's specific to a Play-Doh activity. So if they need different implements to Play-Doh, or they like to squish and would like you to do the same too, they can point, touch, you, squash, and then you can squash the Play-Doh together, and that's giving them words to describe what they want you or what they are doing. It can be also location based. So the one that is on the right, the one that's with the first picture as quiet. So you will see that, there are different visuals that you can compile, and this can be brought around when they go out of home, and they flip and they tell you, I need to go to the toilet. If they are unable to express some of it, some of the children, they will just pull your hand and then run towards the direction of the toilet. But perhaps if you have the option and then for them to let you know, no toilet, so you are not second guessing where they want. Or it can be them telling you, Mama, I'm thirsty, I want water, then they can flip to drink and they show it to you. If our community allows, they even have location communication board. This is one overseas where they have it at a playground. So then children who have yet to develop speech, they go up and point to their friends, to their teachers, to the parents, and that's really helpful for everyone because it decreases miscommunication and it encourages children to learn that, speech is not the only way that we can use to communicate with one another. Okay. Next one is picture exchange communication system. I specifically put this out separate from visuals because your PEC system, it is a formal training system that ideally should be guided by a SLT. There are 6 phases in total, and it goes beyond using pictures during meal times or in a structured activity. So this has to be planned in 6 different phrases, one building upon the other, and it teaches functional communication. What you want is the child to spontaneously request for their own preferences first, rather than you coming towards them to initiate that interaction. Okay. The next modality that is close to my heart is the use of keyword sign. Almost 30 of our centers are involved in learning keyword signs so that children who have yet to develop speech, they can also communicate with one another. And what is keyword sign? It is while we speak, we sign just the keywords at the same time, and these signs are used from Singapore Sign Language. So the children who are unable to speak, they are able to sign, and the classmates and teachers around them understand and know exactly what they want. I want to eat, I want more food. So in this picture, the child is telling the teacher, hey, more, I'm done with my first bowl of noodles, I want more. Okay, and the teacher is saying yes, yeah, more food for you. Okay, and besides signs, we also look at the facial expression and the tone of voice as we speak as well. So it teaches the children the power of communication, that even though I don't have speech, there's a more formal way and a system that everyone understands me as well, and it builds their confidence. Research has shown that it increases participation. They are more willing to go forward to you and make their needs known, and they become more passive communicators to more active ones. So children who have yet to develop speech, usually people speak on their behalf, or parents assume, yeah, this is what I want, he does this and this is what he means. I know exactly because the child does this every day. But maybe not. If we teach them more signs, if we give them more visuals for them to communicate through, they are able to tell you exactly, we have different preferences every day, and it changes. And this allows the child to have some variety from day to day as well. Okay, so that's done with the different modalities that we can use with our children. And this picture of child with a pacifier, it may seem very obvious that, you want a child to speak. Of course, we take out the pacifier. So apart from using the pacifier to soothe, or the child uses it to go to sleep, in the day where the child has opportunities to make sounds and sounds, take the pacifier out from the mouth, and the child is able to babble, to make speech, to express even a every day. You can also you can mold that into actual speech and words as well. Okay, so on to my last point. It is about not only the mode that we use to communicate with our children, but also in terms of how we respond to our children. Our children learn about the world through the gaze, through exploration, through vocalization, and how quickly we respond to them determines how much they learn about the world. Okay, to make it very easy for you to understand the concept of responsiveness, we look at contingency. So what happens to the child before? What happens around and with the child before, and how quickly we respond to the child. So if you need a time frame that's as quick as 2 to 5 seconds, and I always remember Tom and Jerry, you know, their interaction is always very quick and they react to one another, sometimes negatively, but you know, they are very responsive to one another's action and expressions and what they do. So that is important if we want our child to pick up speech and pick up language as well. Oftentimes we put them in front of the screen, or there's the other screen that we want to capture the moments when our child smiles or when our child say, and that capturing that moments. So instead of child seeing our handphone screen or camera, perhaps we show them our face and they look at our facial expression and our tone of emotions. Okay, and they learn about back and forth communication. Okay, your serve and return, concept of serve and return, because you know, when the child makes a sound or expresses something, and when we respond, they learn that this is how communication actually takes place. Okay, so what are some ways that we can do to help to be more responsive to our children, be at the level of our children? So it can be, so this teacher had this child propped up on her legs, because it allows her to see exactly and hear exactly what the child is saying, is doing with their fingers, with their face, okay, with their action. And they're at home, you know, you can lie down and have the child prop on your tummy, and the child has direct access to your whole face also, and whatever is happening with their mouth. So you can be saying and they learn, you know, when I want to say when I want to make sounds, my mouth move, and then they learn different positions. You know, you can open your mouth, you can play your tongue, or ba. They learn that, you know, when you move your mouth, that's where speech comes from. Okay, so, or you could be lying down on the floor with your child. Okay, and they are able, when you're at the level of your child, they not only look at you, but you are also looking at what they are doing at their level of perception. Okay, so as you engage in an activity with your child, also talk about what your child is able to see or do, as if that they have the language, if they're able to speak. Okay, as parents, as children, all of us have different gifts and we have different ways of telling the world who we are. So your child might have not acquired speech, but perhaps they take a little longer, or perhaps before they acquire speech, there's a lot of other communication skills that they need to acquire first. And we be patient, we be responsive to what they are doing, to how they perceive the world, and we offer them with different modalities and opportunities to communicate. Okay, and that's the references, and thank you.
Thank you, Miss Alison, for all your encouraging words. And I think the delightful sharing of the various ways we can encourage children to speak daily in the everyday things we do with them. I think the concrete examples will be valuable to be used in a classroom or even a home setting, and for adults to try out in simple ways how they can get their children to speak. I would like to invite all our speakers back on screen and thank them once again, Professor Ng Bee Chin, Professor Kenneth, and Miss Alison for the insightful tips, ideas, and strategies. I believe that as participants, whether we are parent or educator, we would have gathered that communication with babies and young children is definitely crucial to building their relationship and overall development. And communicating well with children will help them with self-regulation, help them to develop the right language, and also improve their communication skills. Okay, we have pretty good questions that have come in. So right now, I think that we can take some time to answer them. The first one that we have, it's right below the screen as well. When would be the best time to introduce language? This language, I assume it could be, you know, the emotional language, when children are in the moment experiencing the emotion or after they have come down. Can I get Professor Ng to address this perhaps?
Okay.
Because
I guess it's you need a lot of discretion, right? I mean, what most people advise is that if a child is in the middle of a tantrum, then you really need for them to actually calm down before you can actually do anything. But however, there are things even when you have to calm them down, you have to soothe them, right? And the typical, I think, the Yale School of Medicine, they have this really interesting idea called the ruler. All right, there's acronym that you can use, and the first thing you do is you recognize. I see you are really, really upset. All right, and I see that you're frightened. All right, so you recognize, and then you understand. I know. You validate how they are feeling. And then you label them. L is for labeling, and E, you help them express what they are feeling. And what is the last R again? Let me look at my slides. But basically, I think if a child is totally unmanageable, all right, regulate. The last one is regulate. So you can take them through this process, but obviously the main thing that you want to do is to make sure they're safe, all right? If they're throwing a tantrum and they're chucking things around, you want to make sure that the environment's safe, but you want to soothe them. And you can start by introducing, you can start by building this relationship, by talking to them and by communicating. And the first thing to do is that you recognize how they are feeling and you validate them. I don't know if Kenneth and Alison has anything else to add.
okay, yes, Professor Kenneth, would you like to add anything?
Not exactly. I mean, I think Vishen has done a fantastic job of introducing Yale's ruler. I think that as an approach is immensely helpful. I think another thought perhaps I might just want to add is also to get a sense of how your child might be able to how old your child is, because there are some children, I mean, for younger children, it's going to be extremely difficult for them to talk about, just now when you're very angry. I mean, there's this entire ability of helping them to understand what happened earlier and having the complexity of the language to talk about what happened time past. That could be a little tricky. But for older children, particularly our preschool children, then we when at a time where everybody is nice and comfortable, like before bedtime or over mealtime, then we can have a conversation and say, just now when we were at the supermarket, you were very upset. I noticed that at that time you were very frustrated. So I think it's a lot of these depends a lot on where your child is in development, but definitely the ability to the chance to talk about it and to process it among the children who are ready is going to be invaluable.
Okay.
And I suppose another thing I want to add is that there are all these strategies that you can use if children, right? I think yesterday, some of our coaches talk about it, which is you can practice deep breathing, all right? Or another acronym is SOS, slow down, you get them to slow down, calm down. You actively talk to them slowly, all right? And you orient them to connect with the here and now, and you do self-check, all right? What are you, tell me, what are you feeling, and why are you feeling this way, so that you can do that to take them through the steps. And one of the things you can do is deep breathing. It's actually quite funny when you see kids trying to do that. They're getting really, really upset and go, so they start hyperventilating. But I've seen caregivers putting that into practice, and it actually does work because you get them to stop whatever they're doing, and to start really to reflect on what they are feeling and to think about it.
Thank you, Professor Ng and Professor Kenneth. I think at this point, because what I was hearing was, how we can use language with children and, the way they can respond back. But from Alison, maybe just taking a quick one, how about for children, who are not, who can't use language? And any signs that you can recommend that parents can use to develop this, emotional language?
Yes. So if the child is unable to express, there's the other approach of zone of regulation where they use colors, red, yellow, blue, and green, to express, red for more intense and blue for calmer. So you can use colors in replacement of the exact words, but it's always good to pair. And then that you having visuals for them to touch also, and then for them to give you, when they are feeling happy, that's something that the parents can talk about. Or when they are upset, they take the visuals and pass it to the parents. I'm feeling upset at that moment. Or it can be, are you all right? Yes or no. So things that the child can actually express, or even we can accept a head nod or a head shake as well when the child is unable to use words.
Wonderful. So here we have, strategies using words and using gestures, signals, and objects and colors. I think these are wonderful. Okay, so we have our next question. Ooh, okay. What if the child say, I hate you or I don't love you forever when they are angry? Ooh, okay. Sounds quite sad. How about Professor Kenneth? Would you like to handle this?
The emotional blackmail. No, actually, you know what? So that's what I'm. As a parent, you go emotional blackmail. But really, I think if I go back to the entire behavior, the whole thing, that's exactly when I want to avoid an entire escalation of. Why, you think I don't love you? You know how many nights I sleep, I lose sleep over you. I mean, these conversations are not very helpful. I mean, if I were to go back to the entire thing of trying to break the escalation cycle and to engage in some plan ignoring, all I might just do is to say, I know that you're very angry. It sounds like you're very angry right now. I love you no matter what. And then I'll just stop at that point and move on to another activity. Or I can distract the child and move and talk about something else.
Yes, I think empty threats is something that I think most parents are guilty of, especially if we want to, trap our children, feeling guilty for saying such things or for acting up. But I believe in your words that, we have to continue to remain calm and consistent, even when our children are not having the best of their day. All right. Okay. So talking about angry moments, there's actually another angry question here again. But this time round, it's from a parent. Okay, so parent asks, the challenge for most parents or adults could be that they are unable to prevent from showing anger or frustrations in their voices. Any tips on how parents can continue to show the warmth in their language or voice despite difficult times? So we have another spectrum here from a parent's point of view. How about Professor Ng? Would you like to handle this?
Oh, well, I mean, we are not saints, right? I'm a parent too. So, of course, but I think is to actively know it yourself, because I think one of the things that we forget is that we are creatures of habit, right? So we probably did not have the kind of emotional upbringing that we are preaching here. So we quickly, in moments of stress, revert to what we know. And I guess it's practice, right? Practice. You're not going to get it right the first time. But if every time you have a challenging situation, even in your own life, you stop, all right? And you again, you stop, you think, you slow down. And I guess the most important thing is not to match anger with anger, because that's all your child will hear. All right. You just have to be very calm no matter what. And if you cannot be calm, just leave the situation. All right. And that helps when you have other members in the family. And when one is not able to manage, the one adult will just move out and the other adult will move in. The one who is still calm will move in. But it never helps that everybody gets the temperature rises and everybody gets sort of really upset, because I think the best is to do nothing. If you're unable to keep yourself calm, to do nothing until you can be calm. All right.
Thank you.
Can I add?
Yeah, sure.
I think this is when you get us excited. I think what Li Chen has talked about the both parents actually agreeing to work together, and so my wife and I both know that when we start to get very heated in our conversations with our children, the other person who's calmer can step in. And for us, we know that that's a signal to each other that maybe it's the time for me to take a step back. Another thought, and this is probably something not from the educator's side of things, but from the more psychological side, is that this also offers an opportunity for us to teach our children forgiveness. And so and for us, it's coming back to our child and saying, you know what, just now when we had that at the supermarket, I raised my voice at you. That's because I was very angry. That's not right. I hope that you forgive me. And so it's not losing face as a parent, but we're actually teaching a very important skill down here, that we can seek for forgiveness, and that as a family, and we build in this conflict resolution skill in the family that will be very healing to your family in the longer term.
Thank you. Thank you for that insightful thought, Professor Kenneth. But Alison, I mean, anything from you that, parents can use?
I thought that was very powerful, that we can go back to our children and let them know, hey, I tripped out just now. Sometimes I also unable to control my emotions, and it shows that, let children know that we actually can make mistakes too. And sometimes, and what can we do after that? Perhaps, when you let your child know, they might even laugh at you. Haha, maybe mama, next time you can do something, or, ask for a hug or something. So it shows that you're also very real, and that they can relate to you better as well.
Thank you. Thank you for being so empathetic, Alison. All right. I think we might have some time for the last question. So here it is. It says, the preschoolers relate strongly to the adults surrounding them. Does it mean they will form sort of permanent value and behavior after the age of 6 based on what they have been exposed to them? I reckon the person who wrote this probably feels that, if does this mean that, preschoolers, when they're exposed to negative behaviors, and then it kind of stays with them throughout because they have seen, they're so used to seeing negative behaviors. Professor Kenneth, would you like to take this?
Thank you. I think that our preschool years are what we call a sensitive period in their life. Many of what happens early on do stick, and they serve as a model that our young people will take with them for many years of their development. Being a parent of teenagers, I have to say that not only, this is experientially, but also supported by research, that there is a second period of change, and that's in adolescence. And I think it's a sensitive period, meaning that we can do a lot, but that is not the end. So and so for me as a parent, I know that it means that I will have to continue to build a strong relationship. It doesn't mean that just because I have done a good job, I can roll up my sleeve. I can just sit back and say, okay, done. No. A parent's job is for many years, and the interaction with our children may change when they become teenagers, may change when they become adults, but there is still that influence, and particularly in early childhood, and somewhat so as well in adolescence. So it will set a foundation, but it's by no means the only thing that we can do, or the only time.
I hope your sharing has provided some kind of sense of comfort and assurance to the person who asked this. Yes. All right. Okay. I think because we are running short of time, and I really appreciate you taking the time to answer some of these questions, we are going to move on to inviting our NLB partner, Jade Teo, to share a few book recommendations that are relevant to our panel topic on communicating with children. Jade Teo?
Hi, Diana. Thank you so much. And thank you, panelists, for having an amazing session. I really learned a lot. My name is Jay, and I'm a librarian with the National Library Board. So today I'll be sharing a few books with you related to communicating with your child. The first I'd like to start with better parenting with the Enneagram. So understanding how we parent and why helps us become better parents, I think we've seen from the panel today. So seeing life through the filters of our Enneagram type, for example, lets us connect with our children in a very healthy and conscious way. So the book is actually broken down into 3 parts. The first is when Anne explains the concept and the 9 types in a very easy to understand way. The second looks at our parenting types, which includes advantages of being the way we are and ways to be a better parent, as well as the types of your child. So we're aware of their positive and challenging traits, plus how to bring out the best in them. Lastly, part 3 covers parent-child combinations. So reading this book offers an opportunity to better understand your child, react more appropriately in stressful situations, and improve your overall relationship. You'll learn what drives them, what they fear most, what inspires them, and most importantly, how you can best relate to them, whether they are young kids, preteens, or teenagers. So I myself am type 4, and I find this helpful in understanding both adults as parents and children. The next book is The Art of Talking with Children. So science has shown that the best way to help our kids become independent, confident, kind, empathetic, and happy is by talking with them. So from a Harvard faculty member and oral language specialist, this book is a guide that gives readers evidence-based tools and techniques to communicate more effectively with children in ways that lets them foster relationships with less conflict and more joy and kindness. So we're shown how quality communication or rich talk can help us build the skills and capacities that children need to thrive. And the final book I have is A Parent's Guide to Managing Childhood Grief. So the loss of a loved one is a very complex, confusing experience for a child to understand. So children may struggle to express, process, and manage their complicated and conflicting feelings. So whether the loss is a parent, a grandparent, sibling, or even a pet. So in this book, we can find 100 activities that you can use in a group setting, activities that you or another caregiver can do alone with your child, and ways to make the most of interactions to support a grieving child, like having a feelings charade game or making a memory bracelet. So I truly think reading these books, really enjoyed reading these books, and I hope you find them very useful as well. Also, I encourage everyone to scan the QR code and bookmark this link. So we librarians work really hard to create the content under early read for children 0 to 6 years old. So in the resources, you'll find lots of activities and book recommendations specially made. So do check out our website's preschool resources. Not only that, if you scroll down, you'll see links to our Eventbrite pages where we update monthly with free programs that you and your child can attend. And of course, if you'd like to, you can subscribe to our mailing list for more updates. Thank you very much for listening to me share. Back to you, Diana.
Thank you so much, Jade, with all the book recommendation. Okay, so we have come to the end of our morning presentation. Once again, I'd like to thank our distinguished speakers for sharing their valuable insights and spending part of their Sunday with us. So for parents and educators, we hope this morning's discussion have provided you with an array of ideas to build a communication bridge with your child. If you need to revisit the webinars are recorded and will be available on our PCF YouTube channel a week after today's event. Please join us again for the next panel, Technology in Education, which starts at 1:30 p.m. Meanwhile, have a great lunch and a wonderful week ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Alison.